Okay, so I was going to talk about the trip to Borobudur today. So it was quite a moving experience. It turns out that this is the largest Buddhist monument in the world, and it's part of the UN World Heritage thing. It might be one of the 7 wonders of the world too, I'm not sure. But it was built in the 8th century and then restored in like the 1970s or something. But quite amazing. It was built on a hill and it's enormous. And they say, what is it, 2 kilometers if you circumambulate all the different layers? You're walking 2 kilometers to get to the top. So it's quite huge. And you go there, and I mean, there's a few things that struck me were, first of all, just the faith and the diligence of the people to build this kind of thing, the skill that was required, the engineering, the effort, because it's all built out of stone, and how many people must have, you know, put their time and energy into making this happen. And so it must have been under a government that, you know, where the time was quite peaceful and the people could devote themselves to this kind of project. But as you walk and circumambulate the different layers, I think there's 9 layers altogether, then there's something that happens to your mind, you know, as you do it. The first level talks about the desire realm. But a lot of that is hidden. You can't see all of it. And then you start on the next level and it talks about the Buddha's life. So there's all sorts of reliefs. As you're walking along, you know, on one side and on the other side, there's reliefs to look at. And so there's a lot about the Buddha's life, and then there's several more of the circles that are doing the Gandhavyuha Sutra. That's the one where Sudana goes on his spiritual journey and you know, meets 53 or 54 teachers, depending on how you count them. And then the culmination of that is the King of Prayers that we recite. So it talks all about that and how he's on his journey and meeting his teachers. And so you're going through all these, you know, circumambulations where there's reliefs on both sides. And so there's a lot going on and a lot of stories. And then on one side there's Jataka tales and, you know, all these different tales of the Buddha's previous lives and stuff like that. And then after about, you know, I think it's 5 or 6 levels of this, then you come up on the next level, and there's 3 more levels of just stupas, no, you know, reliefs, very stripped down, clean, clear, and, you know, these 3 levels of stupas, and the stupas have, you know, holes in them, and there's Buddhas inside of each of the stupas, and then there's a central stupa there. But there's such a big difference between when you're going around and all these reliefs and stories and, you know, a lot's happening, and then you emerge and then there's just these stupas. It made me think in some way of the death absorptions, because during the early death absorptions, you know, when you're losing, the 5 aggregates are losing their power and the elements are losing their power, there's still a lot going on in the mind. And then once all the winds dissolve in the central channel, everything's just much quieter, which is like these stupas being there. Yeah, at least that's what it made me think of. You know, I have no idea if that's what it meant, but that's what it made me think of. So there's something that happens as you go around. And also as you're going around, you have to include other sentient beings, because there are hordes of sentient beings there. You know, there's all these school children, Indonesian school children, busload upon busload of them, running up and down and scampering up and down and jumping and looking at everything. And then there's all the tourists who come, you know, and clicking away. And some of them are Indonesian tourists and foreign tourists. So there's everything in the world going on at this sacred place, you know. And it's not quiet and reverential, it's, you know. And so I would look at all these Buddhas, you know, carved in the wall, and they're just sitting there, patient, observing the whole circus around them with this incredible, even, peaceful mind. And it really gave me the feeling of how the Buddhas are, you know. I mean, all this chaos and samsara, and they're just there, and, you know, whenever somebody comes who happens to want some dharma or some relief for the chaos, they're there ready and waiting, but they're not judging everybody else who's jumping around and clicking pictures and eating and screaming at each other and everything, you know. It's really something. So your mind has to like encompass all of this, you know. If you think you're going to a holy place and everybody's going to be quiet and reverential, that's not the teaching of Borobudur. Okay? You know, I mean, even in Bodh Gaya when you go, yeah, there's hordes of tourist buses. Of course, most people there are more reverential, but not necessarily. And there's Hindus who come because the Buddha is an avatar of Hinduism, you know. So at the big stupa in India, there's all these Hindus, and then there's people chanting prayers in so many different languages and bringing offerings. And again, everything is going on. Yeah. I think more so at Borobudur than at Bodh Gaya, but you know, it really makes you have to enlarge your mind and realize that you're there for sentient beings' sake, and not to have your own religious experience. Yeah, but it's quite something. So we were able to go to walk up it 3 times. One is on the way to Parakan, where we had the retreat, and then the last day of the retreat we went up there in the morning, and then those of us who stayed the night there went up again in the evening. Yeah, so it was really quite special. And there's a lot of other Buddhist relics. A friend sent me pictures both in Java and Sumatra. And it would be nice to do a whole pilgrimage, I think, exploring some of these places. Yeah. Because this is where Sir Lingpa, Lama Atisha's teacher, lived. It was thought that he was in Sumatra. Okay, Borobudur is in Java, but still quite an inspiring place.